Hi, and good afternoon. We are going to continue with our new unit in science, survival of living things. And you can see that today's lesson is going to be offspring of living things. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And one of the things that I want to bring your attention to is this is our guiding question for today's lesson. And the guiding question is, how do animals help their offspring survive? So what we want to learn and understand as we go through today's lesson is, how do animals help their offspring survive? All right? And we're going to do that by focusing in on these two learning targets. By the end of the lesson, we can explain that reproduction is an important part of the life cycle of all living things. And we can explain how some animal parents help their offspring survive. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started by reading our book, Creating Life. People begin life as babies. Over time, they grow and change. Eventually, babies become children and then adults. Adults may have babies and continue the cycle of life. A life cycle shows how living things grow, change, and reproduce during their life. So that's important. A life cycle shows how living things grow, how they change and reproduce during their life. All living things have life cycles because remember, in our very first lesson, you told me that there were 4 things that living things can do. They can move, they can grow, they can change, they can reproduce. And life cycle is all about how those things that living things can do grow, change, and reproduce during their lifetime. All living things have life cycles. Oops, sorry. That's not what I want either. This is really not doing well this morning. All right. While life cycles are different depending on the type of organism, reproduction is an important step in the life cycle of every living thing. Reproduction is the process where a living thing creates more of its own species. Okay, so reproduction is the process where a living thing creates more of its own species. Right? You see that the life cycle of a butterfly is that it starts as an egg, it then moves into the larva stage. We know it as the caterpillar stage, all right? And then in a little while after it's eaten lots and lots of leaves, it puts itself in this little hook and spins a chrysalis around it, okay? And then it emerges from that chrysalis and becomes a butterfly. Mammals, fish, reptiles, birds, and some invertebrates go through life cycles that are similar. Each of these types of animals are either born live or hatched from eggs. Baby crocodiles are hatched from eggs. Now, one of the vocabulary words for this lesson is offspring, and we've said that word several times. So offspring is a person's child or an animal's young, okay? So you are offspring because you are a person's child. Your dog or your cat or your fish is an offspring because it's an animal's young offspring. Right, so when mammals, fish, reptiles, birds, and some invertebrates are born, they usually look like small versions of their parents. I'm sure if you go back and look at baby pictures of yourself and your mom or your dad, you're going to see that you resembled perhaps either one or characteristics of both of your parents. We call these animals or human babies offspring. They usually grow into an adult and may reproduce to create more of their species. Each animal will eventually perish or die. Amphibians and some invertebrates have a life cycle that is different. They go through what is called metamorphosis. A metamorphosis is a change from one type of an animal to another. Here we have tadpoles, and they emerge into a southern leopard frog. We saw that with the butterfly as well. Most amphibians are hatched from eggs. There you see the egg up in the corner. They live underwater and breathe with gills. As they grow into adults, their body changes again. They develop lungs and live on the land. As time passes, they will eventually reproduce and die. Life cycles repeat over and over again. Even though all animals eventually die, they reproduce to make more offspring. Reproduction is an important step in the life cycle of every living thing. It's how animal species continue to exist on Earth. Like animals, plants also reproduce. However, their life cycle is a bit different. Plants produce seeds that grow into new plants. To make a seed, a plant needs to be pollinated. Pollen is the tiny particles that are on the flower of every plant. And so if you look at this plant carefully, you'll see that here's the pollen on the flower of the plant. But if you look at the bumblebee, he's carrying that pollen with him. Some of it, while he was sitting on this plant, some of the pollen got onto him. And as he leaves the flower, he'll take that pollen with him. Particles of pollen stick to an insect when it lands on a plant's flower, pretty much what I was saying in the previous slide. When the insect travels to another flower, some of the pollen rubs off its body and travels down part of the flower called the pistil. Then the plant can begin to make seeds for fruit. This process is called pollination. Okay? Once seeds are produced, they fall to the ground, are carried by wind, spread by birds or other animals, or are planted by people. The seeds may eventually sprout and become new plants. Okay, so once those seeds are produced, and you can see inside this plant, the wind blew, and all of the little seeds went, and they're going to fall either to the ground or be picked up by animals. Okay, they will eventually sprout and become new plants. In some types of animal species, the parent or parents will do things to help their young survive. There are 4 ways they can help their offspring. They can provide them with shelter, they can provide milk or get them food, they teach them how to survive in their habitat, and they protect them from their predators. Okay, so they teach them survival, they teach them how to survive in their habitat, they teach them how to protect themselves from their predators, they get them food, and they help them with shelter. Some animal species care for their young for many years until the animals have reached adulthood and can meet their needs themselves. Polar cubs will stay with their mother for about 2 years until they have learned how to survive in the Arctic. Female African elephants gather in herds and work together to protect all their babies from predators until they are old enough to protect themselves. Humans, like you and I, feed, care for, provide shelter, and protect their babies for many years as well. Other animal species do not care for their offspring at all once they are born. Once the eggs are hatched or the babies are born, they abandon their young and let them care for their needs themselves. After butterflies and moths lay their eggs on a plant, they abandon their eggs. That means the mom lays the eggs on the plant and she flies away. She never sees her offspring. The eggs will eventually hatch on their own, and the caterpillars will have to fend for themselves. Reproduction is an important step in the life cycle of every living thing on Earth because it allows both plants and animals to continue to exist. So, how do animals help their offspring survive? We're going to come back to that in a minute, okay? Because I want us to look at what it is that one of the things you're going to do when you finish. You're going to read about how each animal takes care of its young and how parents help their offspring, okay? And then after you finish your checklist, you're going to answer the question, what patterns do you notice in how each type of animal cares for its young? Okay, now, when you are answering this question, I really want you to try to remember to use the question to answer the question. So that would be something like not what, the patterns I notice in how each type of animal cares for its young is yada, yada, yada. Okay, something along those lines. All right, now you are going to find these slides of the different animals and what mom and dad have for you, okay? And then you will also complete page 4 that's also attached to your lesson today in LMS. And you're gonna name one animal, there you'll put its name, draw a picture of it, and then on the lines, tell me how it takes care of its young. And then you'll answer your 3 quick check questions at the end, okay? Now, we all learned in reading this text that reproduction is an important part of the life cycle of all living things, so that reproduction helps to continue to allow animals and other species to continue to exist. And this is the thing we're going to do right now. We're going to explain how some animal parents help their offspring survive. So let's go back, okay, to that last page that tells us, because I want us to really understand why reproduction is an important step in the life cycle. And it told us right here on the last page of the text. Reproduction is an important step in the life cycle of every living thing on Earth because reproduction, okay, allows both plants and animals to continue to exist. If there was no reproduction, neither plants or animals, you or I, would continue to exist. So reproduction is important because it allows both plants and animals to continue to exist. Okay, now we're going to go to this question, how do animals help their offspring survive? And I'm going to close out of this and that, and I am going to bring my chart over and I'm going to place it up here. You know, and the last time we did one of these, I got a letter from Mom. Are we supposed to make an anchor chart too? No, you don't need to make one. We're going to make it here together. And understand as I lean on that board, you might see flashing lights behind it, but that's okay. All right. Now, one of the ways that I remember in the text that it says that animals help their offspring is because they provide shelter. So they provide shelter. Okay. One way that animals help their offspring survive is to provide shelter. Another, and your mom and dad do this for you, is that they feed them. Okay, so all animals help their offspring by providing shelter, and by feeding them. Just like your mom and dad, you're your mom and dad's offspring. They provide shelter for you. You all live in a nice house. They make sure to feed you breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, okay? The other thing that we heard was that they teach them survival skills. And your moms and dads do that as well, okay? They've taught you how to walk. They've taught you how to brush your teeth. They've taught you how to keep yourself nice and clean and your clothes nice and clean, all right? The type of survival skills that your mom and dad need to teach you are different than other animal parents having to teach their animals to survive. But even we moms and dads need to teach our offspring, our young, survival skills. And then the last is they protect them. And again, you are your mom and dad's offspring. You're their young, okay? And you know that your moms and dads every day do everything they possibly can to protect you. If you're out riding your bike, you're making sure that you have your helmet on, okay? And that you get to a stop sign, that you're stopping your bicycle, you're looking one way or the other. That's just one example of how they protect you. Here at school and moms and dads as well. We teach you safety as far as not talking to strangers, okay? There's all different ways that your mom and dad protect you, okay, as their offspring, as their young. But they're not alone. All animals do these 4 things to protect their offspring. But you need to understand that not all animals help protect feed or teach survival. You think about the butterfly, right? The mom lays the eggs and goes on her merry way. She doesn't come back to provide shelter for that butterfly or to feed that butterfly or to teach the butterfly how to survive or to protect them, okay? So most animals do these things to help their offspring survive, provide shelter, feed them, teach them survival skills, and protect them. But we have to remember that not all animals do that, okay? In the text, we learn that there are some, like elephants, they wait till their young are pretty old before they set them free and on their way. The same with polar bears. They hang with mom for about 2 years till they get accustomed to the Arctic, okay? But then there are others that lay their eggs and then the offspring are on their own. Parents do not provide shelter, feed them, teach them survival skills, or protect them. How lucky are you that your mom and dad do all of this to help you to survive? Just like someday when you're moms and dads, you will do the same thing. You will provide shelter. You will feed your young. You will teach your young survival skills, and you will protect them. Okay, so you're going to go ahead now with mom and dad's help and get the rest of the activities that you need to go along with today's lesson. And you're going to go ahead and get started on that and be ready to turn it in by the end of the day. You're going to rock. I know you've got this, and I know the assignments that you turn in are going to be beautiful, especially that one piece of work that you have to do that needs to be answered in the use the question to answer the question. It's going to be a complete sentence. It's going to begin with a capital letter, and it's going to end with a period because you're telling me, you're giving me information about an offspring or a young. Okay, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you later.